Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of What's the Nerd. I apologize for the delay, but we got a really special episode for you tonight. We are going to talk about the remainder of Daredevil, episodes 5 through 9. And the first thing that I want to get into, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, is that finale. I cannot believe that they left us on a cliffhanger like that. The
Spoilers ahead,
amount of
by the way.
buildup, heavy spoilers in this episode. We are going to be talking about everything that has gone down for the whole season. And that was one heck of a cliffhanger that they left us off on. We got Matt Murdock finally donning the suit again. We've got Bullseye at large and Kingpin in true form as the mayor. Leighton, what are some of your thoughts on that final episode?
Man. Uh uh, I'm I think it was a fantastic episode. I think it probably is. It sounds so cliche to say, but it's my favorite episode of the season, which usually the finale should be, right? Always leaves you with wanting more, is that's how it should end and culminate. But at the same time, like I think I was ready for something a little bigger. I don't know. The the progression of each character of Fisk and Daredevil from episode 1 to 9 is shown beautifully here. I like that, no matter what, like in the beginning, Wilson talked about how he truly ran for mayor to save the city. He does care about New York. If you watched Echo, which a lot of people didn't, so basically what happened at the end of that was Fisk got touched by Echo's powers, and she basically tried to make him like not be a terrible person. And he like felt it for like a second. So like they kind of turned Kingpin good and he was like, I'm gonna go to run for mayor. But even though you still didn't quite trust it and you didn't know to what extent her powers worked. So you're thinking, okay, well maybe Wilson really has changed. And then we go through, we talked about, how Vanessa kind of took over as Kingpin. We see her in that role as they're separated and Wilson was gone from her. Um and so you're like, wow, like he doesn't even want to do this. He's just kind of still in these criminal affairs for his wife. But as you get through the rest of the episode, especially at episode 7, 8, and then finally 9, you see that he was always the Kingpin. He's probably the most comic accurate version of the Kingpin we've ever seen now, right? He has true power. He's running all of the crime in this city. He's got the iconic white suit. Uh, he smashed a dude's head in with his bare hands. So I'm guessing they're hinting that he has super strength. Maybe he took a super soldier serum. We kind of saw that in Hawkeye. Obviously, he was pretty strong in that. Way stronger than the Netflix rendition of the character. So whatever's going on, the dude is strong. The juicer. So and then we have Matt, who, obviously stops being Daredevil. We see because he almost kills Bullseye. Foggy's gone, whatever. And now it's like he's like, you know what? I have to. We as vigilantes have to protect this city. There's always going to be threats, and it's my responsibility. Obviously, kind of like mimicking the whole Peter Parker with great power comes great responsibility thing. Um, and so I thought it really just was beautiful getting that from episode 1 to 9 full arc, even though it was a cliffhanger ending. Going into season two, you're gonna see these characters at their most comic accurate and also their most enjoyable. Like I feel like the versions of them we got to were so fun to watch. Especially like I said again with Wilson Fisk being super strong, having all the power, being arrogant, knowing that he has no limitations. And then you had Matt, who's just like, you know what, F it. Like, I'm taking the city back. I'm going to be Daredevil probably more than I'm going to be Matt Murdock. The city's on fire. We have to stop the Kingpin, and I'm going to build an army to do it. And he also finally
Yeah.
stopped with the whole, like, I work alone thing. Obviously, after working with the Punisher in previous seasons, having Foggy and Karen on his legal team, you even saw in the courtroom, he didn't really rely on his law partner. He just kind of like did everything on like his own call, even like kind of pulling some shady moves in the courtroom. Like Matt was rogue, just one man show, and now he's opening his heart again to letting people in his community help him out, right? So
Yeah.
again, not just as Daredevil, but he also came around full circle as Matt Murdock.
Very true. And there are a lot of things I want to unpack here, kind of what led us to that finale. And where we left off from our previous podcast about the show, we finally got the true introduction to Muse. And one of the things I thought they did so perfectly in the first half of the show was you got to really see Matt deal with the grief, deal with Foggy's death. And the way that that kind of came about was him putting the suit aside and really trying to be his best version of Matt Murdock, the lawyer.
Yeah,
And I know probably a lot of critiques a lot of people had early on in the show was the fact that there wasn't really a whole lot of him as Daredevil,
right,
but it comes full circle here in the final episode where he tells Karen, like, I meant to push Bullseye off the roof. Like, I meant to kill him.
right,
And I let that darkness consume me. And now, now I'm back. And something we touched on in that episode, which was a really big point early on in the season, was with Fisk and Vanessa going to therapy, trying to work things out, for Fisk being gone. And, one of the things we speculated and discussed was, well, who truly is now the kingpin? Is it Vanessa who wants to continue these criminal underlyings? Is Fisk still doing it, but hiding it? What really is the route that the two of them are going to go? And first and foremost, just seeing how devious Vanessa truly was when at the end of episode 8, when they're at the mayor's ball and Matt calls her out while dancing with her and says, Hey, I know you're the one that ordered the hit on Foggy. Like, why did you do that?
right.
And then still at the same time, taking a bullet and saving Fisk, which I still think is completely crazy. But
Yeah,
we can
well,
dive into that a bit more as well.
right,
And I think a big chunk of it is just, like he touched on later in the episode, he was letting that darkness consume him. And I think he wants to take Fisk down, not in the right way, but in his way.
right.
He doesn't just want a hitman taking him out. He wants it done where he's put on display. It's shown everything that he's doing truly. And he
Earning
goes
back the trust
down,
of the
ship and
city while
all.
also like defeating Wilson and putting him in jail rather than
Yes.
killing him, right? He doesn't want Frank just to go blow his head off because like Frank's ready in the start of the episode. He's like ready to go kill the Kingpin.
Well, that's another thing we need to talk about. We got that flash of Frank mid-season. And, it's kind of the classic Daredevil Punisher vibe of, hey, I'm going to do what you won't. Oh, you did this, you did that. But then you see Frank save Matt. And it's one of the things I find the most interesting of the episode because, you know, Matt's love interest, Heather, in the season, knows how much Matt dislikes and hates Kingpin and hates Fisk, but yet he still saves him. And the thing that I thought was so interesting is she couldn't seem more bothered by it. When you're
Right,
in the hospital room, she's like, well, why did you do that if you obviously don't like him?
right.
And
He
I
was
thought
like,
it's
yeah,
these last few episodes, you've kind of seen that shift between him and Heather's dynamic, which I thought was really interesting. Which part of it you do understand because, she doesn't know he's Daredevil.
right.
It just seems like he's an attorney with a lot of issues and has this deep rooted hate for the mayor. And it doesn't really make sense why.
Well, because other than court cases in the past, right? She probably knows that he's
Right.
right had court cases against his criminal empire and him and whatever else. I also like the fact that like Frank saved Matt basically because Karen asked him, and we saw, if you watch the Punisher show, Frank kind of fell in love with Karen as much as he didn't want to admit it, and like even though he said, he couldn't be with her because that would disgrace the memory of his wife and his children, whatever, and he's still attached to that, and he's
And Matt even touches on it when he says, I heard your heartbeats when the two of you were in the room together.
right. So it's kind of interesting, and it's like the other thing is, although Karen called Frank first, probably knowing that Matt was going to just do his own thing anyway, maybe she didn't want him to worry about her, whatever, ask for forgiveness rather than permission kind of thing. You know, she still was basically telling Matt in that scene, hey, yeah, but did you hear mine? Like, when I saw you, I want to be with you. I choose you, not Frank. Um, and Matt kind of doesn't want to believe it. He's also still a little salty that she just disappeared. But at the same time, you can tell because there's that rift between him and Heather already. He's kind of like, well, maybe I would like to entertain the
Which
thought
you
of going back to
see,
Karen, right?
which you really see at the end of the episode,
Right.
where they have that moment where Matt's about to rush in and save Frank, and she's like, he has an army. Like, you need to get people together.
Exactly.
Which he
And so to kind of jump off of the depressed Frank angle, afterwards, after, kind of basically being rejected by Karen, he's kind of like, well, I knew love was a waste of time. I'm just going to go, FSU. And he tries to take on the entire compound by himself, which was insane. Epic fight scene, right? And like, honestly, I thought he was just going to like blow through it all. I didn't really think he'd get captured.
Well,
Um,
especially when they said use of non-lethals.
right,
That's when
right,
I thought, I'm like, what type of nonsense are you doing? You're dealing with the Punisher.
right. And he's just being brutal, dude. Just slicing dudes up just to slice them up, like kind of torturing him before he shoots them. And then, he gets captured. And I kind of thought for a minute when they did have him in the interrogation circle and basically were like, you know, we're big fans. We want you to join us. Like, if not, like, basically you're dead. And he kind of like just keeps getting the shit beat out of him. And he's like, I'm still here. You guys don't even know half my pain, kind of deal. And then we don't see him. I'm like, man, did they kill the Punisher? Are they gonna really kill the Punisher? Like, because I didn't know if John Bernthal had a contract re-up or if he even wanted to be a part of the show anymore. So I was like, man, maybe this is how he gets out of the contract. And then we see obviously the post-credit stinger, which was super
Hold
cool.
on, let's get into
No,
that a
I
little
know, but
later.
it's just kind of like man, that's kind of where my head was. But the fact that we get to see more of him has me excited.
Because what I want to do is I want to go a little further back
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I know one of the things me and you talked about at the end of our last podcast was the introduction of Muse.
Right,
And I'll be the first to say I did think he was going to have a little bit of a bigger part in the story. I'm going to be
right,
totally honest, but he served his purpose very well. So when you finally see Muse, there's even at the mayor's office, there is this air about a serial killer being on the loose and just taking people out left and right. And at the same time, something we discussed last time was we know that this is a fan of Heather's.
right,
It's alluded to, it's hinted at, it's basically shown in black and white that,
right.
hey, like this character is obsessed with this therapist.
Yeah,
And something I thought that was a really interesting touch with Muse as a character was one of the victims he took being the niece of the formerly deceased vigilante. I
yep,
thought that was kind of an interesting take, an interesting touch, especially when she had come to Matt previous to talk about, hey, like people are going missing, nobody cares, like we need to do something about it. And the thing that I found even more interesting about that was like from an outsider perspective, it's like she doesn't know Matt is Daredevil. She's just coming to an attorney that is blind, being like, hey, like people are going missing. We need to do something about it.
but she knew that he represented, his her uncle's
Right,
case. So
right,
she was like, you know what? You're the only guy that's like really caring for him right now that can do something about it. Let me come to you.
right. And then, they finish that conversation and it's still Matt trying his best to be Matt Murdock, the lawyer. And he's like, there's nothing I can do. Like, there's anti-vigilante task force out there. They'll be able to take care of it. They'll be able to iron it out. And sure enough, she ends up going and looking for Muse by herself.
Right,
And when she gets abducted and Matt finally breaks the suit back out, goes after Muse, which, by the way, just absolutely epic. One of my favorite fight scenes of the show because Matt just beats him down. And to be completely honest, he was going to kill him. I don't care
yeah,
what anybody says. I don't care what if anybody says, "Oh, he's all." It's like he had him strung up. He was going to finish the job.
yeah. I mean, he
If it
looked pretty
was
sadistic during the whole fight.
if it was not for the time constraint for the White Tiger's niece, Matt would have killed him. There is
Right,
no doubt in my mind he was on that path. Like there was nothing that was going to stop him.
right,
And he ends up saving her life. She gets care, like, and everything seems okay. And then he books an appointment and gets an appointment with Heather.
right,
And I mean, we all saw the writing on the wall at that point. We were like, okay, we already know what's going to happen before it happens. And the whole time there's so much tension and build up, and it's done so almost elegantly, like the way slowly but surely he's starting to reveal who he really is during the session, and you could see that realization start to hit, and then it's too late.
Right.
And he has the job done, and we think, all right, well, Matt's got to come in at some point. But the thing that was so interesting is at the exact same time, the anti vigilante task force is on the way to save her as well.
Right.
So it's this really interesting dynamic where you have Daredevil for now, what, the third time on screen, actually in the suit,
Right.
going to save the woman he cares about. And at the exact same time, the anti vigilante task force is coming as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
No,
by the way,
I thought maybe there was going to be like a deal where the Anti-Vigilante Task Force, AVTF, right? That's what they call them. Actually like stopped Daredevil, or like Daredevil slowed them down to where like they weren't going to get to Muse, like they were going to focus on Daredevil because, he was a bigger threat, or he'd been, meddling in the city for too long or whatever, and to where Heather was actually going to die. And by the time that Matt was there, he was going to whoop Muse's ass, but Heather was already
but not
dead
be able
because
to save her.
yeah, because like, again showing that like, okay, well, you're failing as lawyer Matt Murdock, but you're also failing as a vigilante, like, just kind of add to that tragic kind of fall of the character kind of thing. And plus, it's Daredevil. Matt usually loses people that are close to him. And, with them killing Foggy right out the gate, I was like, well, maybe he'll lose someone else, who knows? It's halfway season point. We've already gotten connected to this
True.
character. I think she was likable in the beginning, until like things kind of progress after this episode. So, I mean, I think it would have worked if they would have done it that way. But so I really did not know if he was actually going to die, get captured, or whatever, right? Muse.
But it does lead to an extremely interesting point because I feel like they did almost the death of a Daredevil ally in a different way.
Okay.
So you have that whole scene. Daredevil saves her from Muse, like literally right at the moment that Muse is about to kill her. Daredevil busts through the window. He saves her. There's this epic fight, which, by the way, was wild.
Right.
When he takes the grappling hook of the baton and it goes straight through Muse's shoulder,
Dude, that was wild. That was
that
wild.
I never saw that coming from Daredevil ever.
And I kind of thought it was, it was it was kind of basically because like that's his woman kind of deal. Like it was so personal. He'd been through so much pain. He was definitely at F it. Like this is his black suit season, pretty much. Even though, spoilers, we saw set like photos of him getting a true black suit next season. Like this is his symbiote suit era where he like doesn't really have control of the monster inside right now.
Right, right. And the thing that is so interesting about it, they're going back and forth. It's clear that Daredevil has the upper hand, but Muse is giving him a bit of a tougher time than you would expect this second round.
Right.
And when they get a second of breakaway, Heather finishes the job and shoots Muse dead. And the reason I tie into the kind of the death of a character in a way is when everything is said and done, the mayor and the public eye spins it to where it was the anti-vigilante task force that took out Muse. And then to add insult to injury for Matt in particular, you can tell that early on in the season, Heather has kind of a disliking of vigilantes,
Right.
being like it's undertoned
They
and
have
it's
to hide
very
behind a
hinted at.
mask. She asked
Exactly.
Matt if he wants to, talk about, what is it, like a book or a paper that she had coming up that had to
Yeah.
do with
And
that.
hey, can you get me in touch with Daredevil? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So there's this air of, okay, she doesn't trust vigilantes or doesn't like them or a combination of both. And then Daredevil saves her life. And then Matt is talking to her in the hospital. And one of the most phrases that really stuck out to me was, I didn't save me. Daredevil didn't save me. I saved me.
Right.
And I'm like, I remember watching it and just thinking to
I was
myself, like,
pissed.
what?
I actually screamed at the screen, bro.
I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like you were dead to rights.
Right.
Like he really did save your life. At the end, you did something he would not do.
No,
And now
100%.
you're feeling guilty about it and you're saying that you saved yourself. It's like that's not how this works. It's like you were totally done. The media knows that Daredevil saved your life, not the anti-vigilante task force, but everyone's too scared to go up against Fisk's narrative.
Right.
And this is where you also are starting to see from the people that are loyal to Fisk that they're willing to spin things, that Fisk is never going to be willing to give credit where it's due, especially if it's Daredevil. And this is where you truly see the seed of, okay, this mistrust is going to lead to people picking sides very aggressively.
Right.
And even going into the ball, when Heather gets the invite and asks Matt to go, and you could tell he's on the fence, but you know that there's a good chance he'll be there for her.
Right. He's kind of like still
And
like,
when,
well, I wasn't invited, and she was like +1.
yeah, and that was an interesting moment where you're like, man, he's really trying every way he can to get out of going to this, and now he
Right.
realized he doesn't have much of a call.
Right.
And it's where you see that rift start to develop between the two of them, where she's kind of going her own way, where she's like, hey, I understand that you don't care for these people, but they're my clients. So I'm not going to dive into anything on a deeper level. You already know too much.
Right.
And this is also where you are truly seeing that shift with Fisk and Vanessa, where Vanessa isn't the only one that's devious. You're now seeing that Fisk isn't all the good guy he's saying he is. He's still participating in the criminal underlyings. He's still doing these things.
And you're
And the
finding out
one
his
thing
whole
I do,
team is a little more sinister than they let off too in the beginning. Like they all seem kind of
yep,
innocent, like they're only listening to Fisk because out of fear. But then you're kind of like, wait, maybe these people, like Fisk picked these people, selected these people strategically. Like he knew they were easily manipulated, but he also probably knew they all had some baggage or some sort of aggressive tendencies, right?
yeah. And you see it so often, even with the young guy that he has in his group, that kind of seems like somebody you can walk all over, somebody that's just trying to climb the ladder and progress. And, you even see that little bit of darkness with him when he's manipulating people to get the stories out he wants.
Like BB.
And yep. And something I find super interesting is when you have the commissioner of the police actually trying to gauge the anti-vigilante task force and be like, hey, what on earth are you guys doing? And this comes into play in the ball in particular, where somebody snaps a photo and they pull him into the back and they're like, yeah, there's no photography. It says that for a reason. And they're grabbing the guy. They got his hand above a deep fryer. And the commissioner comes in and is like, hey, like, this is completely ridiculous. You can't do this. Like, this is assault. And the gentleman looks at him and goes, no, this is assault, and dunks the dude's hand into the fucking deep fryer.
Right.
And you're like, whoa, like, they don't care about anything anymore. They're like, hey, Fisk has got our back. We're good.
Which I hated Powell that the whole season, and that moment right there made me hate him so much more. Like I just wanted Frank to walk up and put a bullet in his head. Because like we already know
Well,
Matt
it's
can whoop his
at
ass.
well, even from the Frank aspect, when he's the one that's leading that charge, when Frank is captured, being like, hey, like, we're huge fans, we idolize you, you're the best. And you're just like, please, Frank, find a way to escape and take this guy out.
Right, 1000%.
Which, just as like a little prelude, I do think that's probably going to be the biggest Frank Castle moment of the next season, is going to be him taking out Powell. But
Right.
something I thought was a super nice touch is when Frank saves Matt. To be completely honest, when you were watching that fight scene, I understand from Matt's perspective, he's not killing. But when you're watching that fight, it doesn't look that way.
No, it
Like, it
looks like
looks
he's
like
killing.
Frank and Matt are both killing everybody.
Right.
I understand that's not what's going on, but it really is, like, from a outside perspective, that's how it looks. And they
Well,
are being
especially like
vicious.
when Frank is throwing so much blood around the apartment, but Matt even is just with brute force and, selecting the areas that he hits, pressure points, breaking noses, whatever. Um, yeah, it looks definitely lethal. But you can also tell, like, even though he is being strategic and avoiding fatal blows and stuff, he also has like more of an unhinged kind of like let's just get this over with vibe. Whereas in I feel like the Netflix show and even like fights that we saw, even though like the fight with Bullseye before he throws Bullseye off the roof, he still like holds back to a point, right? Like,
You could tell it's more, I'm trying to end the fight without causing you true harm.
right,
Well, when you see that escape scene, you can kind of tell from Matt in particular, he's not going over the line, but he's towing it. It's kind of like, hey, you're threatening my life. You're coming after me after I just saved your mayor.
in my own
Now I'm going to
apartment,
make a point. Now I'm going to make a point because you're not
right.
even going after Daredevil. You're going after me.
But it's kind of crazy too, because now we know like that everyone knows that Matt Murdock's Daredevil, right? Task Force, the police, Fisk. So it's kind of like, is that going to be something that's outed on national television? Are we going to see in season two, which I know we're getting a little ahead, but still, like, it just has me wondering, like, with them attacking Matt in his own apartment, are we going to see Fisk implementing basically the Sokovia Accords in New York, which we know they're at martial law, vigilantism is outlawed. We know they have this task force, but like are other states going to start wanting to carry this out? Are we going to see a civil war too? Like how much influence over the Marvel universe still does Kingpin have now?
Well, here's the other thing that I find interesting. You finally find out why Foggy was killed
Right.
and where they're building their compound because of an old like lease or land agreement or whatever it is outside of any type of jurisdiction, including federal. So you look at it and you go, wait a second, Kingpin is basically building his lair in an area where he can launder money, he can do whatever he wants, and there's no legal ramifications of any kind, no matter what he does.
Exactly.
And I'll be honest, and I might be getting ahead of myself here just because of something we discussed last week, but there was a big part of me that thought when he had the team together that we were going to see Jessica Jones and
Oh,
Luke
me too, dude.
Cage.
I
And
thought we were gonna see all the defenders for sure. Like when
like,
we
I
said we
really
need an
thought, I'm
army,
like, this would be and maybe that might come into play.
bro,
I'm not saying it won't.
and then you just see Cherry and you're like, oh man.
And then there's like two officers and, like just a couple of people. And you're like, man, like, I think we need a couple more heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, this might have just been the hopeful part of my brain kicking in. But I could have swore I saw Blade standing there for a quick sec, and I was
Damn.
just like, "Man, this is gonna be epic. It's time."
That would be crazy. Yeah,
But
which
I
I
wouldn't be surprised if we get in this next following season just because of the extent of Fisk's forces. Granted, not powered, but still, we know that he has eyes and ears everywhere in terms of the police department, in terms of just every aspect of the actual running of the city. I wouldn't be surprised if they do bring in a few of the possibly defenders, a few maybe
I
more
think they
low
will.
level, street level characters.
I think we're gonna get defenders no matter what. I think we're gonna see like a full-on war, Devil's Reign kind of deal, where there's a full-on war. The vigilantes have to take back New York, defeat Wilson. Maybe Matt becomes mayor. That would be a cool arc for him, where he could actually turn the city around right. He can maybe retire Daredevil at the end of the show. That would be kind of cool. But it could. I've even heard theories that season two, since it is going to come out in 2026, and so is Spider-Man 4 after Doomsday, that season two will actually run into Spider-Man 4, and we'll get to see Daredevil and Matt team up with the Defenders in live action in a movie. So that way we don't have to get Spider-Man on the small screen. We'll actually get him in a full-length movie that's street level, but also has all these heroes. That's like an Avengers team up. And then while all that's going on, they'll be transported to Battle World for Secret Wars, and that's how we'll get all of the street level characters in Secret Wars as well with the main hitters. And I'm like, that would be epic. Like, show me cooler versions of the Defender since the Netflix version sucked. Have literally pretty much all action. Have Matt in the suit the
Yeah.
majority of the season since we didn't get him in the suit the majority of this season. And then bring all of those characters and have Spider-Man lead the Defenders and actually be a legit leader rather than being the sidekick in his own film. And then have that
And
go
take
into the
down Fisk
biggest.
at his own game. Yeah.
Exactly. And then have him literally participate with the black suit, get the symbiote suit at the end of that through all of the chaos, and then be transported to Battle World to have comic accurate Secret Wars where we get Spidey in the black suit for the first time against Doctor Doom, who is RDJ. Bro. And I know this is about Daredevil, but think about the implications of this. And have Charlie Cox
Well, one thing
finally
I will
go
say,
from Netflix, watching his journey from Netflix to the biggest Marvel project of all time.
see, what
Tell me
I would
that's
think
not
would be a
crazy.
really nice touch is like you said about him becoming mayor, is
Okay.
you get to that point where he's going to retire Daredevil, and that's where he has to don the suit again because of the implications, big screen, long term.
Yeah, I mean that's fine too. I just want to see him in a
And
movie with
but
my boy
also, can
Spidey.
you imagine how epic it would be with we saw the size of that compound. Just Luke Cage strolling down Main Street, just taking fire the whole way through with nothing hurting
With
him.
Frank, maybe with Frank too.
Or to save Frank, I would say save Frank, but even to
Frank's
go
gonna save
into
himself.
save Frank and saves out, Frank's out already. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Or
Like,
it'd be
all
cool
right,
to
well, what
like
a waste that was.
have him just bullet sponging for Iron Fist and Iron Fist just whooping the shit out of people behind his back, you know? That'd be
The
really cool.
redemption of Iron Fist, we need it.
Yeah. We need it bad because it's a cool character. Terrible execution in the last iteration's character in live action.
Very true.
Yeah,
But
bro. I would even be
I'm
I
really,
think if they
really
added Moon Knight
excited.
into it too, imagine because like no one really loved the show. We haven't seen him in a while. I don't know if we're getting
Hold
Midnight
on, hold on,
Suns.
hold on. I'm going to stop you there. Moon Knight was a successful Marvel project.
You
Moon
think so?
Knight was pretty well received. I think an issue, and this is something we can discuss too, just from Daredevil and everything else. Moon Knight was one of those projects that I think did really well, kind of like Shang-Chi, and where it was really good, it was well received, and then just nothing was expanded on.
Well, yeah. I think well, and also Marvel was in this period of like they didn't really know still how to make the TV shows. They were trying. They upped the budget a little bit, but the CGI was still a little rushed. The character was kind of all over the place. It was, and I don't think they really knew. You know, I think all the King stuff was kind of happening then too, with the Jonathan Majors arrest and stuff. I don't think they really knew what they're going to be able to do with their universe now that they're having these changes in the storyline.
Right.
Um,
But at
so
the same time, I think Moon Knight was pretty epic. And, you bring up a good point with the street level aspect, but I think he's a tad above that. And
I
I'm
mean,
not saying that he won't be involved, but I do feel that, his power set is a little more than like a Daredevil, than a Luke Cage, than and I not so much an Iron Fist. Iron Fist can be pretty incredibly powerful, but just my thought.
but it also depends on like the forces that we get. I mean, think about the power and the resources that Wilson Fisk has. Right now we have cops as the, AVTF, right? What if he has superpowered individuals on his team? What if Bullseye starts his own little army, to take down the vigilantes amongst
Or
the chaos? What if he
or
gives
even,
super
maybe
soldier
some
serum to
supernatural elements.
exactly, or supernatural too? What if
Because I
Dracula
feel like
shows
that's
up,
what
turns
they
everybody
were.
into vampires, and the defenders have to fight vampires? I mean, I know that's wild, but how dope would that be?
Well, I'm still holding out hope for Blade on that front. So let's not get too excited.
Yeah, but
Because I remember hearing rumors that Anthony Starr, Homelander, was going to be Dracula in the Blade movie,
it'd be cool.
which would be absolutely insane. If that was never a plan, please hear my plea. Let's make it happen. But gonna leave that there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this season of Daredevil, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on in particular? Was there anything that you thought was really well done or maybe needed some work?
Um, I'll kind of give like my brief pros and cons of the season. For me, I love seeing Bullseye again. I love that even though he was put in maximum security, he got out on his own. I love that it's poetic that Matt basically is the reason that he did get out because since Matt couldn't control his anger, he allows Bullseye to have a weapon to then escape, which is his own tooth, which in itself was badass. Um,
That was very dope.
I like that he escaped. We've seen set photos in season two. He gets the comic accurate suit. I love that they're not gonna finally a villain who's sinister, who's fun to watch, who doesn't get killed off in one project like a movie or a TV show. I think that or season one of a TV show. I think that's great. So we'll get some longevity with him, and I think it's also justified because he is basically Daredevil's number one villain, right? I think from the comics or the most recognizable. I think getting to see Matt actually use the billy clubs a lot, grapple. I thought that was awesome. I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I just like he does feel more like comic book Daredevil. He's more acrobatic. Um, I love they kept the grittiness of the original show. I love that we got to see Frank in action. I love that even though their parts were limited, I like that we got to see Foggy and Karen. I just think seeing them back brought me back to high school days, and it was very nostalgic for me, but it worked. It didn't seem like just fan service. It seemed like it worked, and it actually pushed the story and the narrative forward, so that was great. My con, I think, as much as I'd love to see Muse, I was hoping they would resurrect him and give him supernatural abilities, where he, maybe in the afterlife he goes to hell, he meets Mephisto, gets some powers. Because in the comics, like,
Could still happen.
and it can still happen exactly, especially with the Midnight Suns, with talk about Mephisto being in Ironheart, we could see him come back, and that would be epic because you could tie in the Disney Plus series together, just like you did with the Netflix series, have it be its own little subsection, and then we see Muse come back for a season two amongst all of the chaos in New York with martial law being there. He's a serial killer, and now there's no vigilantes to stop him, and he has superpowers. Like, you could make it really cool. But I don't know if that'll happen. So if it doesn't, I'm disappointed that we got a cool character killed off pretty early. But still love the interpretation. But if he does come back, like, I think it could be again one of the best villains that we've had. So overall, I hear speculation online and talk online that this never compared to any of the Netflix seasons. Season two and season three are still better than that. I don't buy that. I think nostalgically, yeah, maybe these seasons are longer. There's more character development, but I think for me, this is the interpretation of the character I wanted on Netflix so long ago. The suit was perfect. The action was great. Matt was still a slick ass lawyer. I love a highlight of mine I want to talk about is episode five, the bank episode. You see Matt Murdock be a badass without even compromising his secret identity, without having to have the suit. Like, showing a superhero in action in their civilian clothes while still having to maintain cover is always fun to watch, and they pulled it off, especially in an episode of television.
Yeah, I'm just gonna interrupt for a brief second. That
Yeah,
episode was one of my favorites as well. It was so clean, it was so smooth. I loved his play like with the bank manager after the fact when they know like, hey, you got us out of a really tough spot. And he's like, you're not coming hoping we revisited the loan, did you? And in my head, I'm like, well, why not, man? Like, I think
yeah,
if there's any
yeah.
reason to help a guy out, that's it. But like it was done so well. And then when he beats down that dude in the alley and you just see him shatter his leg,
Unhinged.
when he grabs, what was it, a hat, something like that, he
The
just
sock
pulls it
cap.
over his
Yep.
eyes and just takes that dude out. And you're like, this is insane.
Super cool. Pick,
Super cool.
unlocks the uncrackable vault just by listening to, to the little, what do you call them, cogs or whatever, springs, fall just
Yeah,
right. That was super cool. Um, I don't
it was a
know,
nice
just
touch.
just aura farmed, the
It
entire
it hit
episode.
it hit it hit all the right notes
Yeah.
that it needed to.
So if we even get one more of those in the next season, an episode like that, um, beautifully written and beautifully filmed, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
overall, I give this show like a 9 out of 10 for me, especially with recent Marvel. I know it's not really fair because like everything we've had has been pretty garbage. Um, I really, really enjoyed it. Minus the
yeah,
animated
and
stuff. Animated stuff's been good.
fair. What
Spider-Man
I'll
and X-Men.
say, just yeah, pretty great. What I'll say on my end, I mean, I'm going to start it off this way. I also would give it a 9 out of 10. Genuinely, I really enjoyed it from start to finish, from full blown epic action sequence, the death of a loved character, Matt turning on that dark moment, but then at the same time, getting such a deep level of character development episode to episode between the backstory of Fisk and Vanessa, between him trying to be better, but you see the rift that that's causing. That's why they're in therapy. And then seeing him actually become not just Mayor Fisk, but become the kingpin of New York, in that role. Just so many elements, and you see his deviousness and his you know just incredible work as a manipulator, where Matt saves him. And it's, hey, how much better would it be if he died to save his mayor?
Yeah,
And there's just so many little touches like that throughout the entire show that give you so much development. It gives you just enough action done absolutely beautifully to keep you fully invested. And I just thought overall it was really incredible. The only reason it docks the point for me, which to be fair isn't a huge reason, is just the cliffhanger. I really did think that at the end of episode 9 there would be a touch more things that would be wrapped up. I didn't think it would
Sure.
be that much of a leave off point. But at the same time, considering that I know that this was originally supposed to be a longer format show, I'm not really opposed to it. So I have a feeling that the next season, I don't think we're really going to see much of Matt Murdock, the lawyer. I think we're going to see Daredevil.
And that's my
And
hope.
I'm
And I
curious.
think that's one of my favorite things about this finale too, was that it gave me Spider-Man No Way Home vibes, where it's like we got to see, we see Spider-Man come from Sony to Marvel with the home trilogy, and people are like, I'm not really feeling it. Like, it's cool to have him in the MCU, but I don't know if I love the direction the character's going. And by the end, they basically like, okay, reset. Here's the Peter Parker you know and love. He's broke. He has no one. He's truly at a loss, and he like literally has a suit that he sewed himself. But he's finally Spider-Man. He knows what great responsibility takes.
Yeah.
He's smooth at swinging. He's got his combat down. He's been to space, fought aliens, whatever. But he's ready to finally be the friendly neighborhood savior of New York. And so that was really cool. And it parallels Charlie Cox's Daredevil because he comes from Netflix. Everyone loved it, but unfortunately things happened. They canceled the show. Now he's coming to Disney. We don't know how it's going to go. The first time we see him is in She-Hulk. And it's like no one that was not a really well received show. Although the
No,
version of him,
wasn't he in No Way
oh,
Home?
okay, he was in No Way Home, yes, as
It
only,
was a quick cameo.
yeah, as Matt Murdock,
I'm a really good lawyer.
and it felt good to have him there because you're like, oh my God, he's finally in the MCU. But at the same, and he's representing Peter Parker, which was awesome. But you don't see Daredevil, so you're like, okay. You see him in She-Hulk, and like the suit's cool because we get the yellow classic suit, dope. Um, he actually is pretty acrobatic. The fighting is cool, but it's like cheesy, and you're like, okay. I hope he's not this campy in his own show. What's gonna happen? Then you kind of have to pick up the pieces, some of the stuff from the Netflix show that didn't work, some of the stuff that did. You have to bring it into this new world, but also make the MCU its own thing. And I think from episode 1 to episode 9, they do that. And now we get to see a Matt Murdock who truly is born again. He realized, hey, I pushed it a little too much. I know my limitations. I do have people around me. I don't need to do this alone, but I can still continue trying to do this as morally ethical as I can, as a Catholic. Um, but also, I know that with the state of the city right now,
I might
I
have to get my hands
I
dirty as
might
well.
have to get my hands dirty. I might have to beat some ass, and I'm okay with that too because I know where I lie and where I stand. Um, and we basically get to see this new version of him going to the next season, and it's the MCU's version that they really want and that the fans want, I think.
And the thing I personally am the most excited about for next season is you did this beautiful setup of showing him as Matt Murdock so much to really transition into, hey, like this is all out war against essentially a city state that the Fisks control.
Yes.
Like when the season ends, your only like reprieve and like hopeful point is Frank looking like he's about to escape. Like you
Yes.
see the Fisks dining in their room with all of their prisoners, like they've won. Like at the end of the day, like that is how season one ends off. The Fisks win, and it's a matter of Matt getting allies together and trying to come up with a resistance to go against them because everything the Fisks are doing is technically legal because of
Yeah.
where their compound is.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and I think it's going to be awesome. Where, like you mentioned, we're going to kind of get a pseudo version of like Matt's black suit era,
Yeah.
where he's going to be willing to be a little rougher than he normally would, but not quite to the same degree because he's going to have good allies around him. And I'm also curious to see who in full those allies are going to be. And I do
Absolutely.
think we're going to get some redemption for some of the defenders. I'm not saying it's going to be all of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if we at least get one or two.
I think we
And maybe
will.
some other Marvel characters we get some introductions to that otherwise we wouldn't.
I would love to see Hector's niece become the White Tiger and maybe fight
Mm-hmm.
alongside them, but be like brutal like a Laura Kinney's X-23 from Logan. Maybe not as
Yeah.
brutal, but like, she could totally do that. Um, I also, you were touching on the point of it's going to be all out war. We're not going to really see Matt Murdock the lawyer. They set it up so beautifully because it's like if they're attacking Matt in his home, he's not going to be able to go
Exactly.
practice law. You know what I mean? Like we know it. And then also it ends with, you know, Matt basically walking into Josie's bar with the police and he puts on the helmet. Karen kind of has her go get him tiger moment with him. He puts on the suit and then the show ends. So you're like, oh my God, next season, like he's preparing for war and that we're gonna see that culminate. Like, I just hope it's like the newest Batman movie where he's just in the suit like 90% of it. Like, oh, I need it, dude.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I'm super excited to see how they tie him in to the rest of the Marvel universe, as well as season two. I think is going to be just absolutely epic. And Leighton, I don't think I have anything else I want to mention about it. Is there anything you got?
No, man, I got it all out. It was awesome. It was man, I'm so happy. As you know, like Daredevil is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. The Ben Affleck
Yeah,
movie still like it sits right here in my heart. And I love the Netflix show too. So to see like Disney just get it right after they've had so many failures, I feel like in this last phase, man, it just makes me so happy and so excited for the future of the MCU. So,
I completely agree, and I'm just excited to see where it goes from there. That was a genuine treat.
and with that, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy, everyone.